Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a tutorial to share with you today. We're working through our Ancient Mesopotamia main lesson block, and there's an activity in here that we are going to recreate. So we're going to be making an ancient shaduf. Now I've made this before with my children when we've done this unit previously, and I'm trying a different way this time, and honestly it was more time consuming and it didn't last as well as the first way that we made it. So keep a lookout for an easier, hopefully easier version that's coming up soon. So I've got these clay boards here, and I've got some clay which was quite dry and dehydrated, and I did soak it for about 12 to 24 hours so that it was pliable once again. And I'm using some clay tools as well just to shape this, but honestly you can just use your fingers and you can use other materials as well. This clay was great because we could form it easily, but it wasn't going to be fired, so over time it did sort of break apart, and because I left it outside it did completely it's not usable anymore, actually. But it was really a beautiful project, and we did something really different this time than we've done in the past, and that's that we grew some little wheat berries. So I'm really excited about that part of the project. I am working alongside my 13-year-old daughter. She has her own. I thought this would be a joint project that we could work on together, but she ended up doing her own, and hers turned out even better than mine. I'm so impressed with the way that hers turned out. It was a little bit of a simpler version. However, because she had less detail, it actually worked a lot better. So that's the first tip that I would have for you, is that keep the areas for your, if you decide to grow wheat berries, keep it a little bit larger, because if it's too small, it's hard to get enough water in there to keep them hydrated, because they will dry out really easily and very quickly. And if you add too much water, you'll sort of disintegrate and dissolve the clay. So it's a delicate balance between the two. So I'm trying to make my well here for the water, and then I'm going to carve out these channels that the water should travel through so that it can irrigate the fields. And the fields I ended up placing sort of on the edges and in the center. And it was a little bit of an afterthought to do this. I didn't quite know how I wanted to do this, and honestly the first time we did this was far more simple. It was a good 10 to 15 years ago, and it wasn't functional. It was more decorative and informational, but this one actually works, and that was really neat for us to experience. So now that I've carved out these little wells here, or rather these compartments to put our soil and our wheat berries, I decided that wasn't enough. So in the edges, on the periphery, I decided to carve out more space, but you can see that channel is very tiny. There wasn't quite enough space to put the soil, and then as soon as the wheat berries sprouted, their roots were just going all over the place and even through the clay itself. I'm going to add the tower for my shaduf here, and I'm actually reusing some blocks, some bricks that I had from a previous kit, from a castle building kit, but you could use clay if you're already using clay. You could also use an oven baked clay, which I think would be a better idea, because then it wouldn't dissolve with water and it would be a little bit easier to work with, and of course you could bake it, so then it would be nice and strong. So I made these small little holes here so that I could add some string to my basket, and I'm rehydrating some soil here. And you could just use soil from your backyard if you want to, but I had these little soil pellets, so I had to rehydrate them. And then I can add them to our little compartments here. That was pretty satisfying to get that in there, and it fit really well. What was difficult was watering it, because using the shaduf, the water will go through the channels, but because it's clay, it's not going to absorb as easily. And really, this is not historically accurate, even though we're trying to make this as a representation. So there were probably other things involved in getting the fields watered. So I've got some wheat berries, and I thought this would be a great idea to add here. And wheat berries do sprout very easily, very quickly. And so that was really satisfying, but they are full size, they're large. So as soon as they did sprout, they really took over this whole space. So now I've got my pole here that I'm going to glue onto my pillar. It wasn't tall enough, so off camera I did add more bricks to this pillar, and I didn't realize it wasn't going to be tall enough until after I formed the basket and a counterweight. So I try to make the counterweight about the same size as the basket. And now that my basket is dry, I can add my string. The first time I added the string while it was still wet and it completely broke apart. The second time I did not add the holes in when it dried, and when I tried to do that once it dried, it broke. So you're seeing mostly the successful aspects of this project, but I'm trying to share with you some of the pitfalls that you might encounter along the way. And now that I've got this strung up, then I can add it to one side of our pole. And then I did a little bit of, I think, macrame or just rope tying in order to tie this counterweight around the string so that I could have something to balance out the weight of the basket with water. I did add some wax in the end because when I tried this out and I filled up the basin with water, it completely dissolved right through, and I thought adding just a little bit of wax might help. So I'm just adding the water here, seeing if it's going to travel down the channel, and it does. It just needs a little bit more water than what I was pouring through the basket. So I added just about a cup of water, and you can see that it goes through all of the channels. Of course, the wheat berries have grown nice and tall and beautiful and obstruct a little bit of the view. You can see all of that soil that has just gone all over the place because there really wasn't enough space to water it and have it retain the water itself as it was growing. And you can see all of those roots coming right out of the soil because they have just outgrown this tiny little space. This was a really fun project to do. I think there are easier ways to do this. The clay was a really nice option because we had a lot of it and you can form it really easily. So I've taken this outside, and once I did, and I left it outside just a couple of days, it was not doing so well. But I went ahead and I planted those wheat berries, and the wheat berries with more soil are doing fabulous. The shaduf itself, not so much. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find that link down in the description box below. The blog post has so many more pictures and information about the unit that we did, as well as links to the materials that I've used. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis and how those wheat berries are doing, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.